Do you know the way?
I was just looking for the sports channel.
Our good buddy back to the show after many months. Praying Medic, what is going on, my friend?
What is going on? What is not going on?
I know.
Holy cats.
I know. What was the last time you were on the show back on election night? I know you were our first guest on election night. That can't be. That was in November.
Been on the show twice, I think, and I don't remember when I was on exactly. It was around the time of the election, I think. Yeah.
Well, either way, it's great to have you back again, man. Thank you for. First of all, I'm so happy you weren't delayed by a mob of KKK members. I encountered 5 Klan members just walking from my car to the front door to the studio building, and they weren't even causing any trouble. They were just laying there. I had to step over them. My God.
Yeah. Well, it's Arizona, and its temperature is getting pretty hot here. Summer's on the way, so
No
all the
hoods.
white supremacists, they're kind of moved up toward Montana, Canada, cooler climates, so they don't have to deal with all this hot weather.
I know. It's just, but here it is. I don't know if you were watching a little bit before I called you up, but
I sure was.
Oh, so then you saw the Jeff Daniels thing. How the hell? Where do they even get the confidence at this point to look at TV hosts in the eyes and still run out the race card as being the reason why the election went that way, when it's obvious that so many of the people who voted for Barack Obama had to switch over to the other side in order for Trump to have won?
Well, when I look at that, that tells me that these people have never had a real good hand to begin with. Mm-hmm. And they've played most of the good cards they had in their hand, and they've got nothing left. And you look at the way that Pelosi and Schumer and Nadler and Schiff are threatening Trump. I mean, it's gone away from this rhetoric of he's a racist, he's a whatever, to now we're going to attack him, we're going to impeach him, we're going to get his taxes. They've got nothing left. They're terrified. They have lost the narrative with most of mainstream America. They never were in touch with mainstream America, the coastal elites and the intelligentsia. But they've even drifted further away because, unfortunately for them, we've got a new attorney general in the DOJ who is making very quick work of getting rid of some corrupt people. And I think we're going to be seeing some big-time arrests coming. The Inspector General report is going to come out. It's going to expose corruption in the media. It's going to, there's more corruption in Hollywood coming out. The Nexium sex cult little case is becoming bigger and bigger, involving more people.
Absolutely.
They've got more problems. They got more problems than they know what to do with, and they don't know how to put out these fires.
Absolutely. I've been following. That's another story I've been saving up my acorns on over here too, because every day more and more stuff with the Nexium thing, it starts expanding. And as I was seeing, if we look at these blast radiuses or radii, whatever's going on, you have all these different topics that are just expanding as far as the network of people who are involved. And now we're starting to see the overlap of all these individual scandals, and it's where you thought that, oh, well, these things can't be in any way, shape, or form, as no matter how bad they are, related. They are. A lot of things really are related. And even if it just comes down to the state of the culture in itself, there it is right there. But, you were talking about right there for a second how the media never really had a grasp on what mainstream America really thinks, especially now that they're trying to pander. They're like the big brothers now of the flyover country, the people that they like to call, make comments about their faith and about their how they smell and how they vote and all that stuff, and how they are trying ever so hard to get rid of the Electoral College, to really render their voices completely silent. They're trying to use reverse psychology on the. Now, Jeff Daniels was just trying to use third grade reverse psychology on Middle America to rethink what they did in 2016.
Yep, and the really pathetic part of all this is the mainstream media used to have relevance, but they lost that relevance about 10 years ago. Not long after Facebook became popular, after Twitter became popular, and after YouTube came out. People quickly ran away from CBS, ABC, NBC, and they began to get their information online through various online platforms, social media. Most people I think, are more informed through YouTube and Facebook and Twitter than any other platform. So the mainstream media and Hollywood, they were used to controlling the narrative. They lost control of that narrative a long time ago. They're still trying to maintain relevance. And the funny thing about this is, you look at the audience that someone like CNN has. You and me and a couple of our friends collectively have a much larger audience than CNN has. We're speaking to more people every day. And you can look at this. Go on MSNBC, ABC, CBS, whatever you want. Go on their Twitter pages. Go on their YouTube channels. They've got almost no engagement from their followers at all. Not only is not anyone listening to them on cable, no one's engaging them on social media. My friends who are Q decoders, we've got millions of engagements every day on Twitter alone, not to mention YouTube. And we are blowing up the culture collectively. You, me, all of our friends. We are, General Flynn, I like what General Flynn put it. He said, what happened was the mainstream media and the establishment didn't realize that they were involved against an insurgency. We are media insurgents. We have waged a war against them, starting with meme warfare years ago, and developing our own platforms, developing our own shows, presenting real information. General Flynn said, we are digital soldiers. And this is an irregular army, an army of digital soldiers. And they know that. They know that, and they're terrified because they have seen the impact that people like us have in the culture. And they're spinning these stupid narratives, like you listen to Jeff Daniels, and they're talking to no one. No one takes them seriously. B, we are making a massive impact. Look at what's happening on Twitter and on YouTube. A lot of us are seeing our numbers being artificially manipulated, likes, tweets, follows, shares, all that stuff. We've all seen our numbers go down artificially. Every once in a while, they'll make a mistake, and they will let the real numbers come out, and we'll realize, oh, wow, I've got twice as many people watching my video or my broadcast than I had for the last 2 weeks. We are making a much larger impact on the culture, and they know it, and they're terrified of that. They've lost control of the narrative, and they don't know what to do about it.
I'm right there with you. It doesn't take away the frustration from seeing it. Like I know how I'm being suppressed. I hear from friends of mine and of course other people out there who just because like you said before, there's people. Everybody is doing a really amazing thing right now. I know a lot of the friends that we have that don't like putting their faces out in public. They don't put their voice to anything, but they're still doing work. There are people who go out there. They have very interesting careers that they don't want to mix that with their work, their patriotic work. And when I say patriotic work, I mean this matters to everyone, no matter what your lot in life is, because if we do not have a place to really live our lives freely and pursue our ambitions without any kind of threats of political retaliation or anything like that we were supposed to be free from over here, then it doesn't matter where we all have overlapping interests in how this storyline plays out, regardless of whether or not you're a certified accountant, or if you're a musician, or if you are in agriculture or construction, whatever the hell it is. This is all of our fights. And it's so no matter what people do, if they bring up a blog, if they keep themselves anonymously working on Twitter, everybody's contributing. Because I'll tell you, and you know it too, a lot of people out there, they put amazing work into the threads that they write on Twitter that aren't necessarily, nobody knows who they are, but they get picked up by people like me who are out there and are putting their voices to it, that want broadcast to be part of their careers. And I think that not only has it found we've established a new insurgency and a new media, but it's also reinvigorated people no matter where their lot in life and their focus in life is. And as far as the powers that were losing their grip goes, Just looking around the world here too. Theresa May may be out the door in the UK. Brexit party surging in the polls in the UK. Italy is bucking the UN with the immigration stuff. The Yellow Vest movement continues to remain strong in France. We saw Le Pen is starting to pop up in the polls again against Macron. We have Australia that's going nationalist. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, you know?
Yeah, look at what happened in Brazil. Their populist nationalist message is resonating with a lot of people. People are sick of globalism. They're sick. They've tried it. It has. Oh, I see. Frank is still talking, but I lost his audio. Anyway, yeah, people are sick of globalism. They are fed up with it. I think you're going to see a massive shift in Europe. We're already seeing it, but I think I think in places like Scandinavia, you're going to see the globalist agenda thrown out. I think we're very soon going to see Macron lose his office, and he'll be replaced by somebody who is a populist nationalist. Obviously, Eastern Europe, Poland, and a lot of other Czech Republic have told these globalists, "Hey, pound sand. We're not interested in this crap anymore. You destroyed our continent." So the tide is turning, and it's turning because there's individuals like us, millions of people like us, unknown people around the world, going out, doing our protests, getting online, doing our Twitter threads, sharing videos, whatever, influencing our friends and our family. And it is a global collective of people we are collectively going through a global revolution against this tyranny of elites who have tried to keep us under their thumb for the last 100 years. And there's a global awakening that's happening right now.
Let me ask you something really quick, because I wanted to ask you, I wanted to get into some of more of your personal story, because we never did that before, and it really does interest me. But as far as suppression on the internet goes, where do you think, I brought this up with a few other guests, but I would love to hear your opinion. Where do you think that we're heading as far as Twitter, Facebook, Google, YouTube, where they're actually they're engaging in political suppression? It's not enforcing terms of service guidelines or preventing violent acts. They're really engaged in political suppression and censorship, which is which I would have to say is reaching and has reached the point of violation of First Amendment rights in this country, especially since these utilities have become, or these platforms have become, the primary way that people are speaking with each other now. That just feeds into everything you were saying before, where all of these really paltry numbers that we are seeing being put up by these late night comedians and CNN, MSNBC, they're doing nothing compared to what is very clearly the new way people are consuming and disseminating information. So if that is just the reality of things right now, then how is this going to be cleared up? How are we going to be able to regain our First Amendment again when we're staring these tyrants in the face, who are very ironically using the guise of free market capitalism to protect themselves now?
Well, it's interesting how Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey and Eric Schmidt play these two narratives back and forth, depending on which audience they're talking to. So on the one hand, they don't actually want to uphold the First Amendment. They're not at all in favor of free speech. So they say, we're private companies. We have no obligation to uphold the First Amendment. Private companies can do whatever they want. There's no rules, there's no restrictions. They don't have to uphold the First Amendment, right? So that's the one narrative that they spin. Then somebody brings a lawsuit against them for content censorship, and here's where they switch to another narrative. They say, look, we're not in control of the content on our platform, whether it's censorship or if they live stream a mass shooting like they did at Christchurch. They live stream some other event. They put somebody's information out there on Twitter or Facebook that is, obviously harassing. So then the person who is harassed sues the platform for allowing that content on the platform. Then Facebook, Twitter, YouTube say, oh, no, we're not in control of the content. We're not a publisher. We're not a private company. We're a public square. People can say whatever they want. They're free to say whatever they want to. We don't control that. We're not like a publisher. We're not in control of the content, right? So now they're arguing a completely different point, which is we're a public square. We're like a utility. We're not actually in charge of the content like a private company would be. And then as soon as you say, oh, well, yeah, you're a public square, that means you cannot censor anymore. If either you're a public square or you're a private company. And they argue both of them. Depending on
because they're progressives, I would have to.
Exactly.
I need to put it out there. They do this because they're progressives, because there is no consistency in that group of people.
Right. I think what's going to happen is, unfortunately, I think it's going to get worse. I think that the censorship is going to get much worse. I think they're going to they'll be purging a lot more conservative accounts. I fully expect my Twitter account or my Twitter and my YouTube account to be banned. I'm anticipating that I'll lose my YouTube channel at some point, and I've made preparations for it. I have my own personal website, had it for a long time. I got deplatformed by Facebook 5 years ago. And it was right at the point where I was ready to launch a book, and Facebook booted me off the platform. That was the only connection I really had to social media. I learned from that experience. So we have our own self-hosted website. I have a way to self-host videos, live streaming. I have a self-contained platform. I like being on other social media, but I'm planning to be kicked off of it at some point. I think it's going to get worse. I think they'll continue the censorship. They'll continue getting worse and worse until at some point, Debbie Nunes and some of his buddies in Congress are going to say, okay, this is it. You've gone too far. You're done. We're going to step in and regulate you. I think the government will at some point step in and break up these monopolies and regulate them. But I think they're going to have to allow them to go too far so they can make a really strong case to the public of why they have to create some regulations.
You know, the thing about that always gets me is when you say you're breaking up these companies, or let's say you have Twitter and you break them up, or Facebook, you break it up. I don't get it. I still have not gotten any kind of clarity onto what a breakup would look like, because it's one thing if you say, okay, well, here's U.S. Steel, and this is just too much. We're going to create a couple of different competing. We're going to break this one steel conglomerate apart, and it's going to have separate boards of directors. They're completely separate now. Now they are actually in competition with each other. There is no binds that tie them together. It's not a monopoly, whatever the hell that means. It's a physical product there. There's no way to politicize steel. So what would a breakup of Twitter look like if you make two separate? I mean, what that would even look like? I don't even know what it looks like.
Yeah, and I don't know that it would be a breakup as in segregating the content into separate platforms. Maybe they, segregate live streaming video into one platform and, real-time chat in another platform. I don't know.
Who would be
the
one?
I have no idea what that would look like. I think more than breaking up, I think it would come to severe regulation, where if they were caught censoring, it would cost them billions of dollars. And even at that point, I don't know what that would look like. I just feel like, and what I've read and seen, it looks like regulation is coming, but it's going to be down the road after they allow these idiots to go a little bit too far.
So then we're looking at pretty much we should be waiting for a reclassification of them as public utilities.
I think so, yeah.
That would be the savior there, because then they can't. All right, well, hey, we'll hold on to that one. Hold on to that one. Put it in our back pocket, because I'll tell you, man, you've got a much larger. I would actually, for as much as this makes me nervous, you've got such a larger reach than I do that would really, I would be getting my ducks in a row too. So it's good to hear that you already have yours in a row.
Yeah, I'm training my followers, and sometimes it happens by accident. YouTube has a couple of times shut down my channel when somebody made some, stupid, false accusations of copyright infringement on my channel. Somebody goes in, makes 3 false claims of copyright infringement. Boom, my channel gets shut down for a few days until I can go in and dispute all the copyright strikes and then get my channel back. Well, when you have as many followers as I have, they pretty much start scrambling like, where the hell is he? Where's his videos at? Yeah. His channel's gone. And so I've been kind of telling people, look, you need to go to my website. If I ever get shut down off of YouTube, go to my website. All my videos will be there. So I'm kind of training my followers, my audience, to point them to my website because I have lost my channel before, and I've had issues with Twitter and things like that, Facebook. So I think if for any of you content providers that are out there listening, get your own website, self-hosted website, get connected with a host and talk to them and find out their views on censorship. I'm using a web host. I told them my situation. I told them my concerns, and they guaranteed me, unless I'm putting out child porn, I'm not going to get deplatformed. They're not going to yank my web hosting. And
we may need to talk then, because I have some plans of my own, and I've been promoting, quite frankly, podcast.com for a while, just as a fallback. And then, of course, there's the SoundCloud and the that I upload all the audio to. So there's always places to go to. And now, of course, but that is huge, and to be able to be self-sufficient in this way is really, really a huge thing there. So we have a few more minutes, and I know that we probably will only be able to scratch the surface of this again, but I want to ask you a little bit. First of all, you're back, the Praying Medic brand. Let's talk about the medic part first. You have a medical background, or were you an EMT worker? You still are?
I worked as a paramedic for 35 years.
Nice. Okay. So then what year did that start?
1981.
Wow. Wow. In 35 years, man, that's huge. So now listen, now when you say praying medic, and I know that you're a very spiritual guy, so I want to know, does your faith predate your work as a medic, or how did that happen? Where did the name, the history behind the brand come from?
Well, I was an atheist most of my life.
Wow.
And I lived as an atheist. I, just like any other guy, just figured I'd work as a paramedic the rest of my life. Worked a lot of different jobs, some municipal fire services, private companies. I worked as a flight paramedic for a hospital-based flight service for a while. A lot of different places. And I kind of ran my ship aground and had some serious life problems back about 20 years ago. And at that point, I kind of started wondering whether God was real. And God showed me through a number of different experiences that he was definitely real, and he was definitely interested in my life and wanted to help me. So I became a believer in God about 20 years ago. And in 2009, I had a dream. It was the first dream I'd had in probably 25 years. In that dream, God told me he wanted me to start praying for my patients. And he said, when you do, I will heal them. And long story short, it took me about 6 or 7 months and praying for probably 500 patients before I started to understand what it took to release healing and miracles. Denise and I have seen thousands of people healed since then. And I started blogging back in 2009 about the patients that I prayed with, people that I saw healed. Like a lot of nurses, paramedics, and doctors who were blogging at that time, because of HIPAA, patient privacy rights concerns, I blogged anonymously. I always anonymized my patients. And I just wrote stories about the people in the ambulance that I prayed for that eventually I did start to see some people healed. So I started writing a blog under the name Praying Medic. And that has been the name I've used on social media for years. It wasn't until a few years ago I actually started showing my face and doing videos. For the early part of it, I didn't do any videos at all, no photographs. It was just all anonymous. And I would like to tell people, hey, if you want to do, something to impact the community online, you can be anonymous. You don't have to do videos. You don't have to have your pictures out there. I know people who do broadcasts on Periscope and they never show their face. You can do that if you want. There's no reason you have to be in front of the camera. But that's kind of the short story of where this all came from.
I remember when the first time you were on, you had alluded to the dream, and we had never talked about it. So I definitely wanted to get around to that. And now now since then, when did you find yourself really getting more drawn to current events? Was it the emergence of QAnon, or was it before then? Because you said you were very active on social media. It was Trump?
Yep.
Okay. So
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Okay. So,
I never really liked politicians. I never trusted politicians. I took a political science class in the 80s and kind of learned that most politicians get into politics because they want to line their pockets with money and they like power and they like money. And I've never really trusted politicians. Never was really interested in politics. I kind of figured the system was rigged and it was corrupt and there's nothing we're going to do about it. All right, I've always had that view toward politics. But then Trump announced that he was going to run for president, and I started having dreams about Trump and things that would happen during his administration if he were elected. And these were in 2015 and 2016 before the election. And so I'm heavily led by my dreams. My dreams kind of always steer me in the direction that wherever God wants me to go, he kind of gives me dreams to show me which direction to go in. So I began writing about prophetically about the things that I saw that Trump was going to accomplish. And then Q came along, and I started having a lot of dreams about Q, still do. So back in 20, it was about 2 years, 2 years ago, I would say, I got on Periscope, started doing some broadcasts on Periscope, put them up on YouTube, just doing the threads that people on Twitter were doing, like Stealth Jeff and Sundance and people like that. I would do their threads. I would go through my Twitter timeline, talk about different news stories, 3 or 4 times a week, kind of like what you do, going through the news, getting people caught up on what's happening. And then Q came along. I had been doing that for about 3 months, and then Q came along, and I kind of shifted in December of 2017 to doing some news reporting and some of what Q was doing. And then I kind of shifted over mainly to helping people understand Q.
In talking about that just for a second, because I know having you on, it would be almost impossible to not to mention Q, because it's been such a huge part of the work that you've done, and it inspires a lot of different type of conversation within your circles and whatnot. And especially when we're talking about faith here for a little bit, faith and hope is a large part of what drives the Q movement, and it's also a large part of what drives criticism of QAnon as well. People say it's hope porn. It pits hope against reason. But I'll tell you one thing, man. I've always said that it is a net positive for me with what I've seen come out of the research that has been spurned from the QAnon drops. I just had Rowan Croft on the show on Monday night. He's doing work out there in Ireland, and I didn't even know that QAnon was what red-pilled him out there in Ireland about what was going on with the world and globalism and the power elites and the power centers that have really been controlling and holding the strings of this big big plot for so long. And he was talking about how he has taken it upon himself to really bring the issues of things like forced migration or population replacement, central banking, cultural Marxism at large to the people of Ireland in really little tiny ways, because he knows that the bigger picture is just way too hard for the average person to really even digest at this point. And I think that those the inspiration that has been given to people like Rowan and yourself is probably the greatest impact that Q is going to leave behind. That it's forced people to go out there and ask questions and really try to look behind what may be presenting itself as something simple when it's a little bit deeper, a little bit more complex, and there's some history behind it that needs to be learned as well. So That's my whole thing with that. And I think it's really interesting to see how it all ties in together.
Yeah, and I agree. The the accusation that Q is hope porn is fine. That Q has predicted a lot of events that did not come to pass the way people expected them to, or the way that Q kind of predicted that they would. However, I've done as much research on Q probably as anyone, and I'm going to be releasing a series of books on Q, covering 2 to 3 months at a time. Q's posts. If you don't understand military deception, the military's use of disinformation and distraction, you'll never understand what Q is all about. Q's mission from the very beginning was a mission to first red pill people to the realities of the geopolitical stage, who was really in control of things, but it was also an operation to provide disinformation to deep state actors to get them to look one way while something was happening somewhere else. And a good example is the very first week of Q's posts. Q was talking about John Podesta and Hillary being arrested and indicted, and Huma Abedin. People who are critics of Q say, well, there you go, just look at that. Q predicted they were going to be arrested and indicted, and they weren't. Therefore, Q is fake. Well, okay. So let's continue that conversation for the rest of the week, the first week that Q was posting. There were these continual posts about Podesta and Hillary and Huma Abedin being arrested and indicted. And then there were these posts about Saudi Arabia and Jared Kushner, and what was Kushner doing in Saudi Arabia, and why did he have a face-to-face meeting with someone over there? Why did he make this unannounced trip, and what is Saudi Arabia known for? Right? This is on November 3rd, 2nd and 3rd. November 4th, there is a massive arrest, crackdown of corrupt Saudi princes and Saudi businessmen.
Okay. I remember this was right on the heels of Las Vegas.
Right. About a month later. Now, here's the thing. When Q was having everybody look at America for American politicians being arrested, the white hats in the intelligence community and military were arresting corrupt politicians in Saudi Arabia.
Now, let me ask you something on that. And I understand what you're saying. And look one way, other thing, but they're still related. Something's
happening over here, and look, most of us now know, because if you've been looking into these geopolitical events, you understand that Saudi Arabia had funded a lot of American and UK politicians through John McCain Institute, right? Saudi Arabia donated $1 million to the John McCain Institute. And Saudi has donated a lot of money to the Clinton Foundation. To Nancy Pelosi Foundation, right? The Saudis have been pulling the strings of U.S. politicians for a long time. The Saudis were in control of our politicians. What they did by arresting the Saudis and freezing their assets was they took away the control of the Saudis over our politicians. And now our politicians don't have the protection, they don't have the cover, and they don't have the financial resources of the Saudis because they got arrested and their assets are frozen.
Well, let me ask you a little bit more on that then. What's your opinions on this pretty much this war in Yemen, where we have Saudi influences, Iranian influences, and then of course the Yemeni people.
That war was a war for a pipeline.
Why do you think that there is a veto from Donald Trump to end or end our involvement in the conflict?
Okay, the Saudis, as Trump has said 1 million times, the Saudis and a lot of other Arab nations, the U.S. has been protecting them militarily at no cost to them forever. We've been fighting their wars, and we've been providing military protection at them, and they have paid us nothing. Well, officially, They haven't offset the taxpayer bill for our funding and protecting them militarily. All right. Now, Trump is telling these rich Saudi nations, you want our protection, it's going to cost you. You're going to have to pay us, or we'll have contracts so you can buy our F-16s and our F-35s and whatever. But here's the thing. The war that you're talking about was a war to get over who was going to get a pipeline through Syria into southern and eastern Europe to provide gas and oil. The Saudis and the Qataris wanted to get that pipeline through there. They were hoping U.S. could go in, take over control. That would allow the Saudis and Qataris to push their pipeline through and provide gas and oil to Europe. Putin also wanted to maintain that territory so he could run his pipeline through. That's all that war was about. It was about who's going to control that strip of land so that a pipeline could go through it. It was just a pipeline war. That's it.
Either way,
and Trump
of people
came in and said, "We're done. We're out of here. We're here to kill ISIS, and we're leaving." And he got rid of ISIS, and we left. He is not interested in this pipeline war, and so it's going to end up in the hands of whoever's going to end up in the hands of, but it ain't going to be, we're not involved in it anymore, really.
I think a lot more people would like to see some more decisive action as far as what's going on in Yemen. As far as a pullout goes, there's few things that I know people are really frustrated with. When the actual end to these conflicts and our involvement is going to be, I think that one thing, for all the people who don't follow Q, who don't care, who might be disillusioned, one thing that would perk people's ears up is if also that one telling thing at the end there. I always remember that one. I asked at first, what the hell is Q's stance on Israel? And to hear that Israel is being saved for last, I remember that being said.
There's a lot of misunderstanding about that.
What is that going to be? Because there's
you have to understand the context of that whole week of posts that Q was dropping at that time. It was about Syria, it was about Iran, and some of the Anons are asking, what's the deal with Israel? There's a lot of people on 4chan and 8chan who are very anti-Semitic and they're anti-Israel. All right. And some of that is shills and clowns and everything else, but not going to get into that. So what was happening at that time was Trump was getting ready to pull out of the Iran deal. All right. And people were asking, what's the deal? Is Trump going to pull out? Q was like, Iran deal is toast. We're pulling out of it. It was a crappy deal. And there were some hidden things in the Iran deal that people didn't know about that weren't made public. So Q said there's a very specific reason why Israel was never mentioned one time when the Anons asked about this. And at that time, Benjamin Netanyahu announced, and this, if you go back to the post of that week, and I think it's either at the end of April or May of 2018, when Netanyahu came out and exposed all this evidence that he said Israeli intelligence had, which proved that Iran was continuing to build its nuclear weapons program. And they had a covert facility in Syria, in northern Syria, that they had photographic evidence and all kinds of other evidence that they were continuing to build their weapons program, despite the fact that they were in this agreement that limited their ability to enrich uranium. Right. So Netanyahu comes out and says, we have evidence that Iran and Syria are continuing to build nuclear weapons to this day. All right. Now, that was the only mention that Q has ever made of Israel. And it was in the context of Netanyahu exposing this illegal uranium enrichment program that Iran and Syria still had.
Yeah. OK. Well, we got to see. I don't. Well, look, I had to ask because between Yemen and Israel, I mean, I'm not I'm not an anti-Semite at all, but I'm not really into anything that's going on in that region. I don't want to be involved with anybody, and I tend to believe that we get into too much trouble over them anyway.
Trump is going to, in the same way that Trump and the military were able to freeze the assets of the Saudis and remove the influence of the CIA and the deep state from the Saudis and North Korea, by the way, the reason why Kim has been negotiating with Trump over the last year and a half is because Trump and Pompeo and the military cut the strings of control that the CIA had over North Korea. And that freed Kim to be able to make better decisions and to stop his nuclear weapons program and start negotiating with Trump. I think that program, those negotiations will continue, and we're going to eventually see Kim will see the light. He's going to want to have the kind of culture that South Korea has, but he's going to have to deal with Trump to get it. And I think that will eventually work its way out. The same thing's going to happen in Iran.
Well, I'm going to be hoping and praying for it. That's for damn sure.
It is.
And
watch, the same thing will happen in Iran. The Iranian people are going to get sick of what is going on. They're already sick of it. They want freedom, they want independence, and they want to be under the control of these mullahs. And the economic pressure, the sanctions, it's going to break the hold that the deep state has over Iran, and they will also be freed in a similar way to what the Saudis and North Korea are going through.
Well, Praying Medic, I've already taken way too much of your time, man. We did 45 minutes instead of a half hour, and I got to thank you so much for it. No, this is great, and it's been so long. First, your first appearance in 2019. We have to do this again. Is there anything you want to preview? Anybody, any new work that's coming out, or
Yes.
Go right ahead.
I've got a couple of books coming out that I'm working on.
Oh, those can be released this year?
Oh yes, very soon. So I'm writing a series of books on Q, and volume 1, the manuscript is done. Denise is working on the cover art. That book will probably be out in the next month. But I'm also working on a novel, my first novel. It is a very interesting novel. It is part psychological thriller, part. Well, I wrote it off the basis of C.S. Lewis's book, The Screwtape Letters. Mm-hmm. And that novel will be coming out hopefully in the next couple of weeks if I can get the manuscript back from my editor. And so I've got, a couple of books coming out. The title of the novel is The Gates of Shiloh. And then we're going to have some Q books coming out in pretty rapid fire succession, hopefully, if I can get those books written.
Well,
I love to write. It's my passion. So
well, it's great that you put yourself toward that, and I can't wait to hear more about it. Let me know when everything comes out. I'd love to follow the progress of that, man. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. And what's your website, just so everybody knows where they can find you independently?
It is prayingmedic.com.
Nice. Very easy. Prayingmedic.com. All right, my friend. Thank you so much for the time tonight. It was great having you as a guest.
Thank you, buddy. Always good being on the show.
All right. Be well, my friend. Take care.
You too.
So, 8:15. We have 10 minutes left.